When you picture a baptism, what do you see? Maybe you have memories of a pastor sprinkling a few drops of water, perhaps enough for a little to run down the face. I can picture holding a baby who's cooing, to which we all respond with, "ah," or screaming, to which we laugh. Most baptisms in our tradition are of infants, perhaps young children, and occasionally adults, like Lily last year and Sean. They're delightful occasions. And some of you may have been present for baptisms by immersion. Perhaps even you were baptized by immersion. It's a much more dramatic representation of dying and rising to new life. But add steroids to that. Some years ago, a Connecticut pastor suggested baptism should involve something terror-inducing, like skydiving. After making your vows, step out of a plane thousands of feet in the air and free fall plummet to the ground before pulling the cord safely to land on solid ground. Or some other equally terrifying, frightening activity, like bungee jumping off a bridge. Now, I suspect he wasn't suggesting that for infants, but rather adults to be baptized. But if that were the case, then everyone in church would have a shared experience of overcoming sheer terror as part of their common Christian experience. Young people would look at their elders with walkers and canes and marvel that they too once jumped from a plane. What if baptism meant confronting your fears? Of course, standing here on this frozen lake gives me another idea. How about a polar plunge baptism? When David Ehrman moved from Philadelphia to Anchorage, he jumped into 32-degree water. He and some fellow transplants did it as part of a fundraiser for Special Olympics. He said, "I'm new to Alaska, and this is one way to be baptized." Interesting choice of words. Of course, Special Olympics holds polar plunge fundraisers all around the country, and among the most famous of those in Chicago, well, this year, like many other things, will be entirely virtual. And they suggest running into a snowbank instead of Lake Michigan, or running through a sprinkler in your yard, but that does sound kind of lame in comparison. Do you remember the Ice Bucket Challenge? One of its co-creators died just last month. Their viral sensation raised $220 million worldwide for ALS research since 2014. Well, what if we made this part of our baptismal rite? No more droplets and dribbles, but do you promise, by the grace of God, to be a disciple? To follow in the way of Jesus Christ, to resist oppression and hatred, to show love and justice, to witness to the work and word of Jesus Christ as best you are able? Yes? Well then here, pour this bucket of water and ice over your head as a symbol of your vows. Or jump out the door of this plane or plunge into some freezing water. There's actually a good reason for these ideas. Because, Michelle's reading from the Gospel of Mark said that when Jesus came up out of the water, he saw the sky split open and God's Spirit, looking like a dove, come down on him. I can picture the clouds parting, a gentle dove descending, landing sweetly on his shoulder, cooing a lovely song. But that's not what's going on here. This is one passage where Eugene Peterson's translation doesn't quite capture the whole message. In the New Revised Standard Version, it says, "Just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove." And that dove wasn't like a gentle breeze. More appropriately, it's like one of those birds that dive bombs for fish. That's because the words torn apart mean much more here than we may give them credit, for the Greek word used is schizen. Some translations say ripped apart or torn open. There's something almost violent in its imagery, and it's meant to get our attention. And that word is used to bookend the life of Jesus. Because you may recall that Mark doesn't tell a birth story. He just plunges right in, and by chapter 1, verse 9, Jesus is already emerging from the water of his baptism. And at that moment, the heavens were torn apart. Skyzen. It's not a gentle revealing of the sun's rays after a storm. Because the only other time Mark uses that specific word is when Jesus hung from a cross and breathed his last breath. At that very moment, the curtain of the temple was skyzen, was ripped apart from top to bottom. But ripping the temple curtain isn't like pulling apart a bedsheet. The curtain that hung in the temple was as thick as a rug, or as dense as tapestry. Human hands could never have torn it apart. Only with God could such a thing be accomplished. So what does it mean that Mark equalizes this moment, these exact moments of his baptism and his death in this way? It's really a disconnect from our images, most of our images of baptism. So therefore, I suggest we consider baptism calls us to something more, like confronting our fears. Not necessarily skydiving or polar plunging, but rather our fear that to actually follow the call of Jesus is to really, literally, resist oppression and hatred. That to follow the call of Jesus, that to actually do that, to really, literally follow the call of Jesus, is to show love and justice. Literally. Like two of my Christian heroes, Colin Kaepernick and Bree Newsom. Colin Kaepernick is one of my Christian heroes. He enacted his faith every time he took a knee. Did you know that among his many tattoos are some that are scripture passages? On his left bicep, for example, Kaepernick inked Psalm 27:3. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear, and though war break out against me, even then will I be confident. Baptized a Methodist, confirmed Lutheran, his act of kneeling is meek and nonviolent, and it makes the powerful and mighty crazy, threatened. I mean, listen to the language used against him. He is a beautiful living representation of Mary's Magnificat and Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And Bree Newsom. Bree is the daughter of the longtime dean of the School of Divinity at Howard University. Following the murder of the Mother Emanuel 9 in 2015, she climbed up a flagpole on the Capitol grounds in South Carolina to rip down the Confederate flag. As she descended, holding the ultimate symbol of white supremacy, she quoted Scripture, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" She said, "I refuse to be ruled by fear." How can America be free and ruled by fear? How can anyone be? I must say, though, that this week, after the violence and unrest in Washington, the imagery of climbing a flagpole and tearing down the Confederate flag might still feel a little troubling. And it just so happens that I'm here recording my sermon again today on Thursday because of some audio issues. And so that's given me an opportunity to give a little more thought and do a little revising to my existing sermon. And so I want to add a third Christian hero today, Stacey Abrams. Look at what Stacey has done to tear down the Confederacy by empowering people and giving them voice. Stacey, also a devout Christian, is the daughter of two Methodist preachers. She grew up lighting candles as an acolyte and singing in the choir. She can quote Scripture by heart, but more importantly, you can see her live Scripture by heart. You can see her live Scripture in the way she empowers and gives voice to the humble, that they may topple the powerful. In her acceptance speech as the party's nominee for governor in 2018, she quoted the book of Esther and said, "We were born for just such a time as this." And yes, she was. And so were you, so were we. If you think polar plunging, skydiving, climbing a flagpole, or taking a knee against injustice at the risk of your job and everything else, if you think that's too much for you, well, you've proven this year that you are much more capable of things than you think. I mean, like big and scary stuff. But I do want to suggest something perhaps even scarier. What would it mean for you, thinking today, what would it mean for you to take a risk to actually show Christ's love? Literally. For example, maybe against whom are you holding a grudge? In this new year, who dare you forgive? Or from whom could you seek forgiveness? And maybe that's even forgiving yourself. What if baptism meant confronting fears like that? Not for the sake of a daredevil thrill, but to stand for something or to stand up for someone. So I'm going to ask you to reaffirm your baptismal vows once again. Do you promise, by the grace of God, to be a disciple, to follow in the way of Jesus Christ, to resist oppression and hatred, to show love and justice, and to witness to the work and word of Jesus Christ as best you are able? Really? Literally? Then take your glass of water, and don't dump it over your head unless that's something you'd really like to do. But take 2 fingers and dip them in the water and mark your forehead and say, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." You ready? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, if that idea frightens you, then just remember what Colin Kaepernick put on his arm. "Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear, and though war break out against me, even then I will be confident." Or Bree Newsom, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" Or Stacey Abrams, "We were made for just such a time as this." And now join me in our prayer of commitment.